Appendix B, Part 1 of Through the Brazilian Wilderness. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sam Elniff. Through the Brazilian Wilderness by Theodore Roosevelt, Appendix B, The Outfit for Traveling in the South American Wilderness, Part 1. South America includes so many kinds of country that it is impossible to devise a scheme of equipment which shall suit all. A hunting trip in the Pantanals in the swamp country of the upper Paraguay offers a simple problem. An exploring trip through an unknown tropical forest region, even if the work is chiefly done by the river, offers a very difficult problem. All that I can pretend to do is to give a few hints as the results of our own experience. For bedding, there should be a hammock, mosquito net, and light blanket. These can be obtained in Brazil. For tent, a light fly is ample. Ours were brought with us from New York. In exploring, only the open fly should be taken, but on trips where weight of luggage is no objection, there can be walls to the tent and even a canvas floor cloth. Camp chairs and a camp table should be brought. Any good outfitter in the United States will supply them, and not thrown away until it becomes imperative to cut everything down. On a river trip, first-class pulleys and ropes, preferably steel and at any rate very strong, should be taken. Unless the difficulties of transportation are insuperable, canvas and cement canoes, such as can be obtained from various firms in Canada and the United States, should by all means be taken. They are incomparably superior to the dugouts. But on different rivers, wholly different canoes of wholly different sizes will be needed. On some, steam or electric launches may be used. It is not possible to lay down a general rule. As regards arms, a good plain 12-bore shotgun with a 30-30 rifle barrel underneath the others is the best weapon to have constantly in one's hands in the South American forests, where big game is rare and yet may at any time come in one's path. When specially hunting the jaguar, marsh deer, taipa, or big peccary, an ordinary light repeating rifle, the 30-30, 30-40, or 256, is preferable. No heavy rifle is necessary for South America. Tin boxes, or trunks, are the best in which to carry one's spare things. A good medicine chest is indispensable. Nowadays, doctors know so much of tropical diseases that there is no difficulty in fitting one out. It is better not to make the trip at all than to fail to take an ample supply of quinine pills. Cholera pills and cathartic pills come next in importance. In liquid shape, there should be a serum to inject for the stoppage of amoebic dysentery and anti-snake venom serum. Fly dope should be taken in quantities. For clothing, Kermit and I used what was left over from our African trip. Sun helmets are the best in the open. Slouch hats are infinitely preferable in the woods. There should be hobnailed shoes, the nails many and small, not few and large, and also moccasins or rubber-soled shoes, and light flexible leggings. Tastes differ in socks. I like mine of thick wool. A khaki-colored shirt should be worn, or, as a better substitute, a khaki jacket with many pockets. Very light underclothes are good. If one's knees and legs are uncomfortably tender, knickerbockers with long stockings and leggings should be worn. Ordinary trousers tend to bind the knee. Better still, if one's legs will stand the exposure, are shorts, not coming down to the knee. A kilt would probably be best of all. Kermit wore shorts in the Brazilian forest, and he had already worn them in Africa, in Mexico, and in the New Brunswick woods. Some of the best modern hunters always wear shorts, as for example, that first-class sportsman, the Duke of Alva. Mr. Fiala, after the experience of his trip down to the Papagayo, the Juruena, and the Tapajos, gives his judgment about equipment and provisions as follows. The history of South American exploration has been full of the losses of canoes and cargoes and lives. The native canoe, made from the single trunk of a forest giant, is the craft that has been used. It is durable, and if lost, can be readily replaced from the forest by good men with axes and adzes. But, because of its great weight and low freeboard, it is unsuitable as a freight carrier, and by reason of the limitations of its construction, is not of the correct form to successfully run the rapid and bad waters of many of the South American rivers. The North American Indian has undoubtedly developed a vastly superior craft in the birch bark canoe, and with it will run rapids that a South American Indian, with his log canoe, would not think of attempting, though, as a general thing, the South American Indian is a wonderful waterman, the equal, and in some ways the superior, of his northern contemporary. At the many carries or portages that the light birch bark canoe, or its modern representative, the canvas-covered canoe, can be picked up bodily and carried by from 2 to 4 men for several miles, if necessary, while the log canoe has to be hauled by ropes and back-breaking labor over rollers that have first to be cut from trees in the forest, or at great risk led along the edge of the rapids with ropes and hooks and poles, the men often up to their shoulders in the rushing waters, guiding the craft to a place of safety. The native canoe is so long and heavy that it is difficult to navigate without some bumps on the rocks. In fact, it is usually dragged over the rocks in the shallow water near the shore in preference to taking the risk of a plunge through the rushing volume of deeper water, for reasons stated above. The North American canoe can be turned with greater facility in critical moments in bad water. Many a time I heard my steersman exclaim with delight as we took a difficult passage between 2 rocks with our loaded Canadian canoe. In making the same passage, the dugout would go sideways towards the rapid until by supreme effort by her 3 powerful paddlers and steersmen would right her just in time. The native canoe would ship great quantities of water in the places the Canadian canoe came through without taking any water on board. We did bump a few rocks under the water, but the canoe was so elastic that no damage was done. Our 19-foot canvas-covered freight canoe, a type especially built for the purpose on deep, full lines, with high freeboard, weighed about 160 pounds, and would carry a ton of cargo with ease, and also take it safely where the same cargo distributed among 2 or 3 native 30 or 35-foot canoes would be lost. The native canoes weigh from about 900 to 2,500 pounds and more. In view of the above facts, the explorer-traveler is advised to take with him the North American canoe if he intends serious work. 2 canoes would be a good arrangement for from 5 to 7 men, with at least 1 steersman and 2 paddlers to each canoe. The canoes can be purchased in 2 sizes and nested for transportation, an arrangement which would save considerable expense in freight bills. At least 6 paddles should be packed with each boat, in length 4 1/2, 4 3/4, and 5 feet. Other paddles from 6 1/2 feet to 8 1/2 feet should be provided for steering oars. The native paddler, after he has used the light Canadian paddle, prefers it to the best native make. My own paddlers lost or broke all of their own paddles so as to get the North American ones, which they marked with their initials and used most carefully. To each canoe, it would be well to have 2 copper air tanks, 1 fore, 1 aft, a handhole in each, with a tight water screw cover on hatch. In these tanks could be kept a small supply of matches, the chronometer or watch which is used for position, and the scientific records and diary. Of course, the fact should be kept in mind that these are air tanks, not to be used so as to appreciably diminish their buoyancy. Each canoe should also carry a small repair kit attached to one of the thwarts, containing cement, a piece of canvas same as cover of canoe, copper tacks, rivets, and some galvanized nails, a good hatchet and hammer, a small can of canoe paint, spar varnish, and copper paint for worn places would be a protection against termites and torrential downpours. In concluding the subject of canoes, I can state that the traveler in South America will find no difficulty in disposing of his craft at the end of his trip. Motors. We had with us a 3 1/2 horsepower motor, which could be attached to stern or gunwale of canoe or boat. It was made by the Evinrude Motor Company, who had a magneto placed in the flywheel of the engine, so that we never had to resort to the battery to run the motor. Though the motor was left out in the rain and sun, often without a cover, by careless native help, it never failed us. We found it particularly valuable in going against the strong current of the Sepotubo River, where several all-night trips were made upstream, the motor attached to a heavy boat. For exploration upstream it would be valuable, particularly as it is easily portable, weighing for the 2 horsepower motor 50 pounds, for 3 1/2 horsepower 100 pounds. If a carburetor could be attached so that kerosene could be used, it would add to its value many times, for kerosene can be purchased almost anywhere in South America. Tents. There is nothing better for material than the light waterproof sea island cotton of American manufacture, made under the trade name of waterproof silk. It keeps out the heaviest rain and is very light. Canvas becomes water-soaked, and cravenetted material lets the water through. A waterproof canvas floor is a luxury, and though it adds to the weight, it may with advantage be taken on ordinary trips. The tent should be 8 by 8 or 8 by 9 feet, large enough to swing a comfortable hammock. A waterproof canvas bag, a loose-fitting envelope for the tent should be provided. Native help is, as a rule, careless, and the bag would save wear and tear. Hammocks. The hammock is a South American bed, and the traveler will find it exceedingly comfortable. After leaving the larger cities and settlements, a bed is a rare object. All the houses are provided with extra hammock hooks. The traveler will be entertained hospitably, and after dinner will be given 2 hooks upon which to hang his hammock, for he will be expected to have his hammock, and, in insect time, his net, if he has nothing else. As a rule, a native hammock and net can be procured in the field, but it is best to take a comfortable one along, arranged with a fine meshed net. In regard to the folding cot, it is heavy, and its numerous legs form a sort of highway system over which all sorts of insects can crawl up to the sleeper. The ants are special pests, and some of them can bite with enthusiastic vigor of beasts many times their size. The canvas floor in the tent obviates to a degree the insect annoyance. The headwaters of the rivers are usually reached by pack trains of mules and oxen. The primitive ox cart also comes in where the trail is not too bad. 160 to 180 pounds is a good load for pack animals, and none of the cases should weigh more than 50 or 60 pounds. Each case should be marked with its contents and gross and net weight in kilos. For personal baggage, the light fiber sample case used by traveling men in the United States does admirably. The regulation fiber case, with its metal binding, sold for the purpose, is too heavy and has the bad feature of swelling up under the influence of rain and dampness, often necessitating the use of an axe or heavy hammer to remove cover. The ordinary fiber trunk is good for rail and steamer travel, but it is absolutely unpractical for muleback or canoe. The fiber sample case could be developed into a container particularly fitted for exploration. The fiber should be soaked in hot paraffin and then hot calendared or hot pressed. This case could then be covered with waterproof canvas with throat opening like a duffel bag. The waterproof duffel bags usually sold are too tight in texture and wear through. A heavier grade should be used. The small duffel bag is very convenient for hammock and clothing, but generally the thing wanted will be at the bottom of the bag. We took with us a number of small cotton bags. As cotton is very absorbent, I had them paraffined. Each bag was tagged, and all were placed in a large duffel bag. The light fiber case described above, made just the right size for mule pack, divided by partitions, and covered with a duffel bag, would prove a great convenience. The light steel boxes made in England for travelers in India and Africa would prove of value in South American exploration. They have the advantage of being insect and waterproof, and the disadvantage of being expensive. It would be well if the traveler measured each case for personal equipment and computed the limit of weight that it would carry and still float. By careful distribution of light and heavy articles in the different containers, he could be sure of his belongings floating if accidentally thrown into the water. It is not always possible to get comfortable native saddles. They are all constructed on heavy lines with thick padding which becomes water-soaked in the rainy season. A United States military saddle with a Whitman or McClellan tree would be a positive luxury. Neither of them is padded, so would be the correct thing for all kinds of weather. The regulation Army saddle blanket is also advised as a protection for the mule's back. The muleteer should wash the saddle blanket often. For a long mule-back trip through a game country, it would be well to have a carbine boot on the saddle, United States Army, and saddlebags with canteen and cup. In a large pack train, much time and labor are lost every morning collecting the mules which strayed while grazing. It would pay in the long run to feed a little corn at a certain hour every morning in camp, always ringing a bell or blowing a horn at the time. The mules would get accustomed to receiving the feed and would come to camp for it at the signal. All the rope that came to my attention in South America was 3-strand hemp, a hard material, good for standing rigging, but not good for tackle or for use aboard canoes. A 4-ply bolt rope of best manila, made in New Bedford, Massachusetts, should be taken. It is the finest and most pliable line in the world, as any old whaler will tell you. Get a sailor from the old school to relay the coils before you go into the field, so that the rope will be ready for use. 5/8 to 7/8 inch diameter is large enough. A few balls of marline come in conveniently, as also does heavy linen fish line. A small-sized duffel bag should be provided for each of the men as a container for hammock and net, spare clothing, and a mess kit. A small waterproof pouch or bag should be furnished also for matches, tobacco, etc. The men should be limited to 1 duffel bag each. These bags should be numbered consecutively. In fact, every piece in the entire equipment should be thus numbered, and a list kept in detail in a book. The explorer should personally see that each of his men has a hammock, net, and poncho, for the native, if left unsupervised, will go into the field with only the clothing he has on. Food. Though South America is rich in food and food possibilities, she has not solved the problem of living economically on her frontiers. The prices asked for food in the rubber districts we passed through were amazing. 5 mil reis, $1.50, was cheap for chicken, and eggs at 500 reis, 15 cents apiece, were a rarity. Sugar was bought at the rate of 1 to 2 milreis a kilo, in a country where sugar cane grows luxuriantly. The main dependence is the mandioc, or farina, as it is called. It is the bread of the country, and is served at every meal. The native puts it on his meat and in his soup, and mixes it with his rice and beans. When he has nothing else, he eats the farina, as it is called, by the handful. It is seldom cooked. The small mandioc tubers, when boiled, are very good and are used instead of potatoes. Native beans are nutritious and form one of the chief foods. In the field, the native cook wastes much time. Generally provided with an inadequate cooking equipment, Hours are spent cooking beans after the day's work, and then, of course, they are often only partially cooked. A kettle or aluminum Dutch oven should be taken along, large enough to cook enough beans for both breakfast and dinner. The beans should be cooked all night, a fire kept burning for the purpose. It would only be necessary then to warm the beans for breakfast and dinner, the two South American meals. For meat, the rubber hunter and explorer depends upon his rifle and fishhook. The rivers are full of fish which can be readily caught, and in Brazil, the tapi, capybara, paca, agouti, 2 or 3 varieties of deer, and 2 varieties of wild pig can occasionally be shot. Most of the monkeys are used for food. Turtles and turtle eggs can be had in season, and a great variety of birds, some of them delicious in flavor and heavy in meat. In the hot, moist climate, fresh meat will not keep, and even salted meat has been known to spoil. For use on the Roosevelt expedition, I arranged a ration for 5 men for 1 day, packed in a tin box. The party which went down the Duvida made each ration do for 6 men for a day and a half, and in addition gave over half the bread or hardtack to the camaradas. By placing the day's allowance of bread in the same box, it was lightened sufficiently to float if dropped into water. There were 7 rations in the arrangement of food in these boxes, and they were numbered from 1 to 7, so that each different box could be used every day of the week. In addition to the food, each box contained a cake of soap, a piece of cheesecloth, 2 boxes of matches, and a box of table salt. These tin boxes were lacquered to protect from rust and enclosed in wooden cases for transportation. A number in large type was printed on each. Number 1 was cased separately. Numbers 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7 were cased together. For canoe travel, the idea was to take these wooden cases off. I did not have an opportunity personally to experience the management of these food cases. We had sent them all ahead by pack train for the explorers of the Duvida River. The exploration of the Papagayo was decided upon during the march over the plateau of Mato Grosso, and was accomplished with dependence upon native food only. Daily ration for 5 men. 16 of rice on Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday. 13 of oatmeal on Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. 100 of bread on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 18 of tea biscuits on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. 21 of ginger snaps on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. 11 of dehydrated potatoes on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. 5 of dehydrated onions on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. 8 of Erbswurst on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. 6 of evaporated soups on Sunday, Tuesday, and Saturday. 25 of baked beans on Thursday and Saturday. 17 of condensed milk on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 44 of bacon on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 56 of roast beef on Monday. 56 of braised beef on Tuesday and Saturday. 70 of corned beef on Wednesday. 78 of ox tongue on Thursday. 72 of curry and chicken on Friday. 61 of boned chicken on Sunday. Fruits. 5 of evaporated berries on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. 20 of figs on Sunday and Tuesday. 16 of dates on Friday. 32 of sugar on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 10 of coffee on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 5 of tea on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 4 of salt on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 16 of sweet chocolate on Wednesday. Each box also contained 1 yard of muslin for each day of the week, 2 boxes of matches for every day of the week, and 1 cake of soap for every day of the week. Above weights of food are net in avoirdupois ounces. Each complete ration with its tin container weighed nearly 27 pounds. The 5 pounds over net weight of daily ration was taken up in tin necessary for protection of food. The weight of component parts of daily ration had to be governed to some extent by the size of the commercial package in which the food could be purchased on short notice. Austin, Nichols and Company of New York supplied the food stores for my polar expedition, worked day and night to complete the packing of the rations on time. The food cases described above were used on Colonel Roosevelt's descent of the Rio da Duvida, and also used by the party who journeyed down from the Gai Parana and Madeira rivers. Leo Miller, the naturalist, who was a member of the last-named party, arrived in Manaus, Brazil, while I was there, and in answer to my question, told me that the food served admirably and was good, but that the native cooks had a habit of opening a number of cases at a time to satisfy their personal desire for special delicacies. Bacon was the article most sought for. Speaking critically, for a strenuous piece of work like the exploration of the Duvida, the food was somewhat bulky. A ration arrangement, such as I used on my sled trips north, would have contained more nutritious elements in a smaller space. We could have done without many of the luxuries, but the exploration of the Duvida had not been contemplated and had no place in the itinerary mapped out in New York. The change of plan and the decision to explore the Duvida River came out in Rio Janeiro, long after our rations had been made and shipped. Mate, the tea of Brazil and Paraguay, used in most of the states of South America, should not be forgotten. It is a valuable beverage. With it, a native can do a wonderful amount of work on little food. Upon the tired traveler, it has a very refreshing effect. Dr. Peckelt, celebrated chemist of Rio de Janeiro, has compared the analysis of mate with those of green tea, black tea, and coffee, and obtained the following result. In 1,000 parts of green tea, 7.90 parts are natural oil, 22.20 parts are chlorophyll, 22.20 are resin, 178.09 are tannin. Alkaloids: 4.50 parts are metana, 464.00 are extractive substances, 175.80 parts are cellulose and fibers, 85.60 parts are ashes. In 1,000 parts of black tea, 0.06 parts are natural oil, 18.14 parts are chlorophyll, 34.40 parts are resin, 128.80 parts are tannin. Alkaloids: 4.3 parts are metana, 390.00 parts are extractive substances, 283.20 parts are cellulose and fibers, and 25.61 parts are ashes. In 1,000 parts of coffee, 0.41 parts are natural oil, 13.66 parts are chlorophyll, 13.66 parts are resin, 16.39 parts are tannin. Alkaloids, 2.66 parts are metana, 270.67 parts are extractive substances, 178.83 parts are cellulose and fibers, and 25.61 parts are ashes. In 1,000 parts of mate, 0.01 parts are natural oil, 62.00 parts are chlorophyll, 20.69 parts are resin, 12.28 parts are tannin. Alkaloids, 2.5 parts are metana, 238.83 parts are extractive substances, 180.00 parts are cellulose and fibers, and 38.11 parts are ashes. Manner of preparation. The mate tea is prepared in the same manner as the Indian tea, that is to say, by pouring upon it boiling water during 10 to 15 minutes before using. To obtain a good infusion, 5 spoonfuls of mate are sufficient for a liter of water. End of Appendix B, Part 1.
Appendix B, Part 2 of Through the Brazilian Wilderness. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tom Clifton. Through the Brazilian Wilderness by Theodore Roosevelt. Appendix B, The Outfit for Traveling in the South American Wilderness, Part 2. Some experiments have been made lately with the use of mate in the German army, and probably it would be a valuable beverage for use with our own troops. 2 plates and a cup, knife, fork, and spoon should be provided for each member of the party. The United States Army mess kit would serve admirably. Each man's mess kit should be numbered to correspond with the number on his duffel bag. An aluminum kettle for lightness, cooking outfit, or the Dutch oven mentioned, with 3 or 4 kettles nested within. A coffee pot or teapot would suffice. The necessary large spoons and forks for the cook, a small meat grinder, and a half-dozen skinning knives could all be included in the fiber case. These outfits are usually sold with the cups, plates, etc. for the table. As before suggested, each member of the party should have his own mess kit. It should not be carried with the general cooking outfit. By separating the eating equipments thus, one of the problems of hygiene and cleanliness is simplified. Rifles, ammunition. A heavy rifle is not advised. The only animals that can be classed as dangerous are the jaguar and white-jawed peccary, and a .30-30 or .44 caliber is heavy enough for such game. The .44 caliber Winchester or Remington carbine is the arm generally used throughout South America, and .44 caliber is the only ammunition one can depend on securing in the field. Every man has his own preference for an arm. However, there is no need of carrying a 9 or 10 pound weapon when a rifle weighing only from 6 3/4 to 7 1/2 pounds will do all that is necessary. I personally prefer a small caliber rifle, as it can be used for birds also. The 3-barreled gun, combining a double shotgun and a rifle, is an excellent weapon, and it is particularly valuable for the collector of natural history specimens. A new gun has just come on the market which may prove valuable in South America, where there is such a variety of game, a 4-barrel gun weighing only 8 1/4 pounds. It has 2 shotgun barrels, one .30 to .44 caliber rifle, and the rib separating the shotgun barrels is bored for a .22 caliber rifle cartridge. The latter is particularly adapted for the large food birds, which a heavy rifle bullet might tear. .22 caliber ammunition is also very light, and the long .22 caliber exceedingly powerful. Unless in practice it proves too complicated, it would seem to be a good arm for all-round use. 16 to 20 gauge is large enough for the shotgun barrels. Too much emphasis cannot be placed upon the need of being provided with good weapons. After the loss of all our arms in the rapids, we secured 4 poor, rusty rifles, which proved of no value. We lost 3 deer, a tapir, and other game, and finally gave up the use of the rifles, depending on the hook and line. A 25 or 30 caliber high-power automatic pistol with 6 or 7-inch barrel would prove a valuable arm to carry always on the person. It could be used for large game, and yet would not be too large for food birds. It is to be regretted that there is nothing in the market of this character. We had our rifle ammunition packed by the U.M.C. Company in zinc cases of 100 rounds each, a metallic strip with pull ring closing the 2 halves of the box. Shot cartridge, 16 gauge, were packed in the same way, 25 to the box. The explorer would do well always to have on his person a compass, a light waterproof bag containing matches, a waterproof box of salt, and a strong, light linen or fresh silk line, with several hooks, a knife, and an automatic at his belt, with several loaded magazines, for the latter in his pocket. Thus provided, if accidentally lost for several days in the forest, which often happens to rubber hunters in Brazil, he will be provided with the possibility of getting game and making himself shelter and fire at night. Fish. For small fish like the pacu and piranha, an ordinary bass hook will do. For the latter, because of its sharp teeth, a hook with a long shank and phosphor bronze leader is the best. The same character of leader is best on the hook to be used for the big fish. A tarpon hook will hold most of the great fish of the rivers. A light rod and reel would be a convenience in catching the pacu. We used to fish for the latter variety in the quiet pools while allowing the canoe to drift, and always save some of the fish as bait for the big fellows. We fished for the pacu as the native does, kneading a ball of mandioc farina with water and placing it on the hook as bait. I should not be surprised, though, if it were possible, with carefully chosen flies, to catch some of the fish that every once in a while we saw rise to the surface and drag some luckless insect under. Clothing. Even the experienced traveler, when going into a new field, will commit the crime of carrying too much luggage. Articles which he thought to be camp necessities become camp nuisances which worry his men and kill his mules. The lighter one can travel, the better. In the matter of clothing, before the actual wilderness is reached, the costume one would wear to business in New York in summer is practical for most of South America, except, of course, the high mountain regions, where a warm wrap is necessary. A white or natural linen suit is a very comfortable garment. A light blue unlined serge is desirable as a change and for wear in rainy weather. Strange to relate, the South American seems to have a fondness for stiff collars. Even in Colombia, the hottest place I have ever been in, the native does not think he is dressed unless he wears one of the stiff abominations around his throat. A light negligee shirt with interchangeable or attached soft collars is vastly preferred. In the frontier regions and along the rivers, the pajama seems to be the conventional garment for day as well as night wear. Several such suits of light material should be carried. The more ornamented and beautifully colored, the greater favor will they find along the way. A light cravenetted mackintosh is necessary for occasional cool evenings and as a protection against the rain. It should have no cemented rubber seams to open up in the warm, moist climate. Yachting oxfords and a light pair of leather slippers complete the outfit for steamer travel. For the field, 2 or 3 light woolen khaki-colored shirts made with 2 breast pockets with button flaps, 2 pair of long khaki trousers, 2 pairs of riding breeches, a khaki coat cut military fashion with 4 pockets with button flaps, 2 suits of pajamas, handkerchiefs, socks, etc. would be necessary. The poncho should extend to below the knees and should be provided with a hood large enough to cover the helmet. It should have no cemented seams. The material recently adopted by the United States Army for ponchos seems to be the best. For footgear, the traveler needs 2 pairs of stout, high hunting shoes built on the moccasin form with soles. Hobnails should be taken along to insert if the going is over rocky places. It is also advisable to provide a pair of very light leather slipper boots to reach just under the knee for wear in camp. They protect the legs and ankles from insect stings and bites. The traveler who enters tropical South America should protect his head with a wide-brimmed, soft felt hat with ventilated headband, or the best and lightest pith helmet that can be secured. Head nets with face plates of horsehair are the best protection against small insect pests. They are generally made too small, and the purchaser should be careful to get one large enough to go over his helmet and come down to the breast. Several pairs of loose gloves, rather long in the wrist, will be needed as protection against the flies, piums, and boroshudas, which draw blood with every bite and are numerous in many parts of South America. A waterproof sun umbrella, with a jointed handle about 6 feet long terminating in a point, would be a decided help to the scientist at work in the field. A fine mesh net fitting around the edge of the umbrella would make it insect-proof. When folded, it would not be bulky, and its weight would be negligible. Such an umbrella could also be attached, with a special clamp, to the thwart of a canoe, and so prove a protection from both sun and rain. There are little personal conveniences which sometimes grow into necessities. One of these, in my own case, is a little electric flashlight taken for the purpose of reading the verniers of a theodolite or sextant in star observations. It was used every night and for many purposes. As a matter of necessity, where insects are numerous, one turns to the protection of his hammock and net immediately after the evening meal. It was at such times I found that the electric lamp was so helpful. Reclining in the hammock, I held the stock of the light under my left arm, and with a diary in my lap, wrote up my records for the day. I sometimes read by its soft, steady light. One charge of the battery, to my surprise, lasted nearly a month. When forced to pick out a camping spot after dark, an experience which comes to every traveler in the tropics in the rainy season, we found its light to be very helpful. Neither rain nor wind could put it out, and the light could be directed wherever needed. The charges should be calculated on the plan of one every 3 weeks. The acetylene lamp for camp illumination is an advance over the kerosene lantern. It has been found that for equal weight the carbide will give more light than kerosene or candle. The carbide should be put in small containers, for each time a box is opened, some of the contents turns into gas from contact with the moist air. Tools: 3 or 4 good axes, several bill hooks, a good hatchet with hammerhead, and nail puller should be in the tool kit. In addition, each man should be provided with belt knife and machete with sheath. Collins makes the best matches. His axes, too, are excellent. The bill hook, called foice in Brazil, is a most valuable tool for clearing away small trees, vines, and undergrowths. It is marvelous how quickly an experienced hand can clear the ground in a forest with one of these instruments. All of these tools should have handles of second growth American hickory of first quality, and several extra handles should be taken along. The list of tools should be completed with a small outfit of pliers, tweezers, files, etc. The character, of course, depending upon the mechanical ability of the traveler and the scientific instruments he has with him that might need repairs. Survey instruments. The choice of instruments will depend largely upon the character of the work intended. If a compass survey will suffice, there is nothing better than the cavalry sketching board used in the United States Army for reconnaissance. With a careful hand, it approaches the high degree of perfection attained by the plane table method. It is particularly adapted for river survey, and after one gets accustomed to its use, it is very simple. If the prismatic compass is preferred, nothing smaller than 2 1/2 inches in diameter should be used. In the smaller sizes, the magnet is not powerful enough to move the dial quickly or accurately. Several good pocket compasses must be provided. They should all have good-sized needles with the north end well marked, and degrees engraved in metal. If the floating dial is preferred, it should be of aluminum and nothing smaller than 2 1/2 inches, for the same reason as mentioned above regarding the prismatic compass. Expense should not be spared if it is necessary to secure good compasses. Avoid paper dials and leather cases which absorb moisture. The compass case should allow taking apart for cleaning and drying. The regular chronometer movement, because of its delicacy, is out of the question for rough land or water travel. We had with us a small-sized half-chronometer movement recently brought out by the Waltham Company as a yacht chronometer. It gave a surprisingly even rate under the most adverse conditions. I was sorry to lose it in the rapids of the Papagaio when our canoes went down. The watches should be waterproof with strong cases, and several should be taken. It would be well to have a dozen cheap but good watches and the same number of compasses for use around camp and for gifts or trade along the line of travel. Money is of no value after one leaves the settlements. I was surprised to find that many of the rubber hunters were not provided with compasses, and I listened to an American who told of having been lost in the depths of the great forest, where for days he lived on monkey meat secured with his rifle until he found his way to the river. He had no compass and could not get one. I was sorry I had none to give. I had lost mine in the rapids. For the determination of latitude and longitude, there is nothing better than a small 4 or 5 inch theodolite not over 15 pounds in weight. It should have a good prism eyepiece with an angle tube attached, so it would not be necessary to break one's neck in reading high altitudes. For days we traveled in the direction the sun was going, with altitudes varying from 88 degrees to 90 degrees. Because of these high altitudes of the sun, the sextant with artificial horizon could not be used unless one depended upon star observations altogether, an uncertain dependence because of the many cloudy nights. Barometers. The Goldsmith form of direct reading aneroid is the most accurate portable instrument, and of course should be compared with the standard mercurial at the last Weather Bureau station. Thermometers. A swing thermometer with wet and dry bulbs for determination of the amount of moisture in the air, and the maximum and minimum thermometer of the Signal Service or Weather Bureau type should be provided, with a case to protect them from injury. A tape measure with metric scale of measurements on one side and feet and inches on the other is most important. 2 small, light, waterproof cases could be constructed and packed with scientific instruments, data, and spare clothing, and yet not exceed the weight limit of flotation. In transit by pack train, these 2 cases would form but 1 mule load. Photographic. From the experience gained in several fields of exploration, it seems to me that the voyager should limit himself to one small-sized camera, which he can always have with him, and then carry a duplicate of it soldered in tin in the baggage. The duplicate need not be equipped with as expensive a lens and shutter as the camera carried for work. 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 is a good size. Nothing larger than 3 1/4 by 5 1/2 is advised. We carried the 3A special Kodak and found it a light, strong, and efficient instrument. It seems to me that the ideal form of instrument would be one with a front board large enough to contain an adapter fitted for 3 lenses. For the 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, 1 lens 4 or 4 1/2 focus, 1 lens 6 or 7 focus, 1 lens telephoto or telecentric 9 to 12 focus. The camera should be made of metal and fitted with a focal plane shutter and direct viewfinder. A sole leather case with shoulder strap should contain the camera and lenses, with an extra roll of films, all within instant reach, so that a lens could be changed without any loss of time. Plates, of course, are the best, but their weight and frailty, with difficulty of handling, rule them out of the question. The roll film is the best, as the film pack sticks together and the stubs pull off in the moist, hot climate. The films should be purchased in rolls of 6 exposures, each roll in a tin, the cover sealed with surgical tape. 12 of these tubes should be soldered in a tin box. In places where the air is charged with moisture, a roll of film should not be left in a camera for over 24 hours. Tank development is best for the field. The tanks provided for developing by the Kodak company are the best for fixing also. A nest of tanks would be a convenience. One tank should be kept separate for the fixing bath. As suggested in the Kodak circular, for tropical development a large sized tank can be used for holding the freezing mixture of hypo. The same tank would become the fixing tank after development. In the rainy season it is a difficult matter to dry films. Development in the field, with washing water at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, is a patience-trying operation. It has occurred to me that a small air pump with a supply of chloride of calcium in small tubes might solve the problem of preserving films in the tropics. The air pump and supply of chloride of calcium would not be as heavy or bulky as the tanks and powders needed for development. By means of the air pump the films could be sealed in tin tubes free from moisture and kept thus until arrival at home or at a city where the air was fairly dry and cold water for washing could be had. While I cordially agree with most of the views expressed by Mr. Fiala, there are some as to which I disagree. For instance, we came very strongly to the conclusion, in descending the Duvida, where bulk was of great consequence, that the films should be in rolls of 10 or 12 exposures. I doubt whether the 4-barrel gun would be practical, but this is a matter of personal taste. Appendix C. My letter of May 1 to General Lauro Muller. The first report on the expedition, made by me immediately after my arrival at Manaos, and published in Rio de Janeiro upon its receipt, is as follows. May 1, 1914. To His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Rio de Janeiro. My dear General Lauro Muller, I first wish to express my profound acknowledgments to you personally and to the other members of the Brazilian government whose generous courtesy alone rendered possible the Expeditio Scientifica Roosevelt Rondon. I wish also to express my high admiration and regard for Colonel Rondon and his associates who have been my colleagues in this work of exploration. In the third place, I wish to point out that what we have just done was rendered possible only by the hard and perilous labor of the Brazilian Telegraphic Commission in the unexplored western wilderness of Mato Grosso during the last 7 years. We have had a hard and somewhat dangerous but very successful trip. No less than 6 weeks were spent in slowly, and with great peril and exhausting labor, forcing our way down through what seemed literally endless succession of rapids and cataracts. For 48 days we saw no human being. In passing these rapids we lost 5 of the 7 canoes with which we started, and had to build others. One of our best men lost his life in the rapids. Under the strain one of the men went completely bad, shirked all his work, stole his comrade's food, and when punished by the sergeant he, with cold-blooded deliberation, murdered the sergeant and fled into the wilderness. Colonel Rondon's dog, running ahead of him while hunting, was shot by 2 Indians. By his death he in all probability saved the life of his master. We have put on the map a river about 1,500 kilometers in length, running from just south of the 13th degree to north of the 5th degree, and the biggest affluent of the Madeira. Until now its upper course has been utterly unknown to everyone, and its lower course, although known for years to the rubbermen, utterly unknown to all cartographers. Its source is between the 12th and 13th parallels of latitude south, and between longitude 59 degrees and longitude 60 degrees west from Greenwich. We embarked on it at about latitude 12 degrees 1 minute south and longitude 60 degrees 18 west. After that its entire course was between the 60th and 61st degrees of longitude, approaching the latter most closely about in latitude 8 degrees 15 minutes. The first rapids were at Navite in 11 degrees 44 minutes, and after that they were continuous and very difficult and dangerous until the rapids named after the murdered Sergeant Pichon in 11 degrees 12 minutes. At 11 degrees 23 minutes the river received the Rio Kermit from the left. At 11 degrees 22 minutes the Marciano Avila entered it from the right. At 11 degrees 18 minutes the Tunay entered from the left. At 10 degrees 58 minutes the Cardozo entered from the right. At 10 degrees 24 minutes we encountered the first rubberman. The Rio Branco entered from the left at 9 degrees 38 minutes. We camped at 8 degrees 49 minutes, or approximately the boundary line between Mato Grosso and the Amazonas. The confluence with the upper Aripuanan, which entered from the right, was in 7 degrees 34 minutes. The mouth, where it entered the Madeira, was in about 5 degrees 30 minutes. The stream we have followed down is that which rises farthest away from the mouth, and its general course is almost due north. My dear sir, I thank you from my heart for the chance to take part in this great work of exploration. With high regard and respect, believe me, very sincerely yours, Theodore Roosevelt. End of Appendix B. End of Through the Brazilian Wilderness by Theodore Roosevelt.